Hey guys, I hope this is working. It's working a little bit funky on Steam's end, or I'm sorry, on Facebook's end. Yeah, I hope you guys can see me. I'm not really seeing anything in the comment section where it usually tells me who's on. Um, but yeah, I am happy to join you again. It's shocking that it's already October. A lot going on this year. 2020 has definitely been interesting so far. And not only interesting, but it's been really good for the Austro Folk Assembly. So I'm setting up something here on my phone because I think maybe I'll see the. There we go. Now they're coming in. Hey guys, thanks for joining me tonight. Um, Again, if you see me looking down, it's because I'm trying to get this set up here on the phone because sometimes I get a lot more questions this way, or at least I can see the questions better. Well, since last time I talked with you guys, we had a really phenomenal fall fest up in Minnesota at the towards the beginning of last month, and that was it's always a great time up there. This year, Fall Fest, because of COVID restrictions and whatever else, we ended up going back to the very first place that we held a Fall Fest, and it was neat to go back and see how we changed, see how we've grown since we're staying in that location 5 years ago. So yeah, it's been nice. It's been a cool month. When I was up there, I also had the honor and the great experience of being able to go check out Baldershof and to kind of help do some demo work in part of that Hof that's getting remodeled and help those guys get some things set up. Our amazing folks in the Northern Plains are doing a tremendous job with taking care of that place and getting it ready and working on it so that it can be the shining temple to Balder and a place for our folk together that it's destined to become. So that was really great to be able to be a part of that and to be able to put in some labor there with my AFA family making that place really special. So, sorry, I was looking at an odd Facebook interaction on the phone. They keep updating their system, and it's always a little bit new for me. Um, so October's here. Here in just about 2 weeks, we're going to be celebrating Winter Nights in the Poconos. This is Winter Nights number 9. Um, it's still open to register if you guys are able. This is kind of Eastern Pennsylvania. Um, it's an amazing event, a very special event. This event is where I met my wife 6 years ago. Um, it's really a special place. It's beautiful this time of year as fall progresses here to see the leaves change, Christmas in the air. It's a really nice spot. I look forward to it every year. The camp that we use is a great camp. I believe it was built in the 1930s, and it's a special place for us. So hopefully, if anybody's hearing this and can make it, it's going to be 16th, 17th, and 18th. And you get a hold of Cliff Erickson, C. Erickson at runestone.org. If you guys are interested in registering, getting set up, we would love to see all of our AFA family there. Like I said, it's a really, really special event. So something I always look forward to. Um, Also, thinking about October and stuff we have coming up. On the 9th, we have our Day of Remembrance for Guido von List. And Guido von List is probably the earliest figure in kind of the proto revival of Asatru that we talk about. Certainly in the Romantic period in Germany, rediscovering our history, parts of our lore, and most importantly, rediscovering magical work with the runes. And he was gifted a very special insight into the runes during an operation. And he was gifted this insight into what became the Armanen rune set. and those runes correspond with the runes that the secret runes that Odin spoke about in the Runetal at the end of the Havamal. So Meister von List was extremely important. Without a lot of the foundations he laid down, some of the people that came after him and took up the torch wouldn't have been able to. So we're very thankful to all that he has passed down to us, and we celebrate him on the 9th of this month. So I'd encourage you guys all to get together with your local AFA family to study up and talk about Meister von List, talk about the runes, and raise a horn in his honor. Also, important days and special things coming up in October. On the 15th is the birthday of our founder, Stephen McNallen. And like our AFA family, to make a special point of celebrating that. Make sure to wish him a happy birthday. Make sure to raise horns in his honor. Get together, have a meal in his honor. Steve McNallen laid the foundation. Without Steve McNallen, we would all not be here. And House of True would not be what it is, certainly in the United States, but that's my firm belief throughout the world. We owe Steve more than we could ever repay him, and I encourage you all to celebrate his birthday this year on the 15th. One of the other things that's really special about October, and something that we celebrate at our Winter Night celebrations, we celebrate a Disir bloat. And bigger than that, this is the time of the year that the veils between our worlds are thinnest. And it's a time that the land of the dead and the land of the living come very close in touch. It's a really special time of year to worship and honor our ancestors, to reach out to them, to interact with them, and for them to be able to interact with us if we leave ourselves and our hearts open for that. So I think that's a special thing to think about this year in the crispness of the fall. Take some time to remember and to honor your ancestors. In the AFA, with our Disir bloat tradition at Winter Nights, it's a special time to honor your female ancestors that have passed. That love and that caring that so many generations of our women have put into their families, that doesn't just stop when they pass. It doesn't just stop at death. Our female ancestors continue that love for their family on into the next world. They continue to look after us. Kind of a random side note relevant to this. At Winter Nights in the Poconos, I want to say 4 years ago, it was a Disir bloat that was the most powerful ritual I was ever a part of. At that time, Githia Pat Hall did a Disir bloat, and the connection that I made during that bloat with my grandmother was one of the most profound spiritual experiences I've ever had. For a moment in that circle, my eyes closed, I could feel my grandmother. I could feel hugging her. I could feel leaning down and just the smell, the feel, the sound of her voice. My grandmother was with me in that circle. And if you haven't experienced something like that, it's very hard to fully capture here in words. But there was a lot of folks, myself included, that wept like little kids because that blood was so special. So it's neither here nor there. It's just a really special memory I have of October and of Winter Nights coming up. So this is kind of a Q&A thing. I see we got a lot of people who have joined us. Do we have any questions tonight or any things that you guys would like to talk about or that you guys would like to have me talk about? I am looking and I see a whole lot of people saying hi. Hi to all of you guys. But as of yet, I do not see any questions. All right, well, trying to think of what I got for you guys in lieu of questions. One thing also that you guys may want to know, or that's been significant in this last month since I've talked to you guys. I'm not sure how many you guys have, for our international audience especially, but even nationally, if you guys aren't close to the West Coast. But there's been the worst fires, as far as I know, ever in the state of California during this last month, and some really, really destructive fires in California and in Oregon. Um, we still, I mean, there's still a lot burning over there. We still have smoke where I am over here in Reno. But one of the things that's always scary is those fires come very, very close to Odenshoff. The town that Odenshoff in was actually evacuated because the fire was so close and burning things in the area. And we were concerned. We were doing what we can to be diligent. We were being prayerful. We were trying to, you know, hope for the best on that. And Hoff is safe. We actually had people for the first time go up and evacuate special items out of the Hoff and take the God poles down and make really sure that none of those precious things were lost should something terrible happen. But we've been very fortunate. The gods have smiled upon us. The land whites have taken care of it, and the Hoffs or the fires have missed our Hoff. And it was really nice to go up there and kind of celebrate that this last weekend and spend some time with our AFA family up there at our Hoff. It's always an important reminder of how special those things are when fires come through and get that close and threaten it. One of the really nice notes about that, for those of you who haven't been able to make it out to the Hoff yet, is that Odenshoff is positioned right near a small airfield that local fire prevention uses for some of their fire mediation things. It's pretty close to that staging area. They've also in the past used the Hoff parking lot as a staging area for things. So I think that puts it towards the top of the list as areas that are going to be kept safe from the fires. At least that's our hope. And so far, that's worked out pretty well for us. Hmm. So what do we got going on, guys? Do y'all have any questions or anything you'd like to talk about this evening? Guess also since last time I talked to you, Sonnevold Kindred in Northern California became an official AFA kindred. That kindred includes Steve and Sheila McNallen, which is really special. So it's always nice to have another AFA kindred with us. Um, since last time we spoke, Ben Cooper has become an apprentice folk builder in Idaho in the Northwest region. So we appreciate you stepping up, Ben, and we look forward to the good work you're going to do there. Um, I think of what else. Looks like we got a special guest that joins me from time to time. Hopefully, she doesn't throw up on me tonight. If you guys haven't seen her, this is my daughter Aubrey, and she's beautiful and she's amazing, and she's being good right now, which is always better than the alternative. Come on, guys, you got to help me out with some questions. But thank you for joining us. Thanks for bringing her up, Mandy. Appreciate that. Off screen is my lovely wife, Mandy. Thank you, Mandy, for all the stuff that you do. She is super helpful behind the scenes, and she does a lot, both specifically for the AFA, but also to help me have the time and the space to do the AFA things that I need to do, which is tremendously important. So I appreciate that. Hmm. So I'm thinking, what else? While I got you guys here, I'd like to give a congratulations to two folks that took their oaths and became official oathed in AFA folk builders. Brandy Callahan of North Dakota and Zach Cato of Indiana. They took their oaths at Fall Fest, and that was a very nice thing and a special thing to be there and be a part of. Come on, guys, got to help me out a little bit with some questions. Looking over here on the side to see if I've got something. Um, Michael, I see that you said Assyrian. I don't know if that's a typo, if you had a question or something interesting that you want to talk about the Assyrians. I assume it was a typo, but I'm not sure. It may be an interesting topic of conversation. Um, so what else? One thing that I suppose I could talk to you guys about tonight, and I don't usually do this. This is an unintentional plug for for the other team, but there's something out there if you're interested in the history of Alcatraz and you're kind of a history buff, certainly on our modern history. There's something called the Heathen History Podcast. Now, these folks are not the kind of people that I have anything in common with, not the kind of people that agree with me on much of anything, but the people who do a lot of really interesting and in depth research on some interesting topics. And because their worldview is so shockingly opposite to mine, often intending them as insults, they give us some really interesting compliments. But they do a good job of talking about some of the origins of modern Alcatraz, and they do a good job of talking about some really seminal figures in Alcatraz. And I think that's really interesting and worth your time. I think some of the history on Steve McNally and the AFA there is interesting to look at. And their shows on the show on the Edenic Rite, their show on Alexander Rudd Mills, and the show on Elsie Christensen are really kind of interesting to stop and take a look at if you can sort through all of the kind of communist garbage that they've got going on there. The pearls of information are really valuable. That's something I've been paying attention to lately because history is very important to me. I think that we have a tendency very often to look at history as some ancient thing in the distant past, and I think that history is folks never know that history is happening until it's too late and it's already happened. um, any of the great figures of history, very often they don't realize they're doing something historical. It's only after that they pass that it was. So I think it's important now that we pay really close attention to modern Alcatraz, to our history, and try to keep that preserved. It's something very important, something we're working on, a behind the scenes project about the AFA's history. And it's been really important in this last year. We've established historians at each of our HOFs to keep track of that history and the history of those places. So I'm excited with what they come up with and the work that they do. Apologize this month for being kind of late on reminding you guys this was coming up. So that's on me. I hope that I'm glad that so many people, so many of you have come and watched. It'd be nice if there was some questions because I feel like I'm just kind of rambling, but that's okay. If I need to, I'll keep shooting from the hip. Um, yeah, I haven't even seen anything pop up new on the side for a little bit, so I'm hoping that's working still. It was really nice this last weekend to see so many different AFA Winter Finding celebrations. Um, it's really something that I hope everybody who's listening to this is aware. But AFA events aren't just our national events, and AFA gatherings don't just happen at our HOFs. Just about every weekend, and in 2020, the COVID-19 restrictions and stuff have made this more iffy than normal, but just about every weekend around the United States and around the world, we have AFA members getting together to celebrate, to have moots, to have bloats, to have meals, sometimes just to raise a horn or even just to raise a glass a local pub or a bar to talk about AFA things and get together with their AFA family. And that's a really special thing. If you're listening to this and you don't take part in that, you're really missing out. And I would encourage you to talk to your local folk builder and get set up, because as true happens in the real world, we can connect this way from behind the computer, and that's valuable and it's special, and it's great that we live in a time that we can do that over such great distances. But if we don't take this and make it happen in the real world with people next to us, if we don't get together and raise a horn with somebody, bloat with somebody, have a hug or a handshake, and celebrate ritual with somebody, then we really miss out on so much of the richness of practicing House of Truth. So I'm hopeful that you guys all have good groups of people that you get together with. And if you don't, I hope that you reach out to your local folk builder, because they would love to help you get set up with that. That's literally all of what they do, is try to build that. Um, so I'm trying to think of what stuff to come at you with tonight, because we have yet to have a single question, which is an anomaly, but that's okay. Um, so one thing that's now we have now we have one of our folk builders, Rob Stam, at random say unicorn. So I think maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's comments going on that I don't see, but I saw that. Um, what else has gone on? With our Hoffs coming in, and with a lot of the artwork that's come in, something internally we've talked about over this last few months has been really working on doing more art, doing more aesthetic things, adding more beauty to a lot of the stuff we do. We've worked really well so far in the Astro Folk Assembly on building community and on spreading the message of Alcatru, and gaining members and practicing Alcatru. We'd also like to fill some of that with some art and some beauty. And we're now getting to a stage with these Hoffs that we're able to. And to that end, Gothi Spawn Harrell of the Witten, he is going to take up kind of coordinating that and helping make sure we have thriving, I guess, art and beauty at our Hoffs, and then some of the things that we do, because we're at a point where that's becoming a real big thing, and that's really nice to see. If you guys haven't checked it out at Thorshoff, there's a beautiful mural that Spawn painted, and it's sorry, looking at the comments, I'm not sure if there's technical difficulties tonight or just what's going on. But if you haven't seen that mural, it is literally awesome in the very truest meaning of the word. If you go in there and you see it, it strikes you with awe, and the effect of that's really important. And I want that at all of our Hoffs, and I want that experience for our folk, to honor our gods, and to inspire others with what we do. Um, so what else is going on tonight, guys? Does anybody have any questions or anything at all they would like to talk about? I hope you guys still like doing these once a month. I know I do. It's something that I look forward to doing. Um, something else until folks start helping me out with a couple of questions here. I'd like to talk about Texas. Recently, an AFA Gothi, Kevin Long, and his family moved to Central Texas, and we've had some struggles in Texas as far as getting some things going and really establishing things there. And one of the reasons is we haven't had somebody that's really wanted to step up and take a lead there and organize. We have an apprentice folk builder in southern Louisiana that's kind of covering the region, Michael Foley, and he's doing a great job, but he's only been on the team for a few months. But just this last weekend, Gothi Kevin Long had had a really nice looking gathering in Central Texas. And he says there's many more to come that he has planned. So I encourage you, if you're in Texas, going to go through Texas, reach out to him at klong@runestone.org because the AFA has got big things coming in the state of Texas with him down there. And that's a really nice thing to see. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time this evening. I had hoped we'd get a couple of questions at least. Um, but so far, we have not. Okay, I'm getting some input in that some things need to be done on Facebook to fix some things in the comments section. That's why we're not getting stuff, and that makes me feel a little bit better. James, thank you for asking. First question of the night that I've seen. Um, okay, now we're getting a couple of questions coming in. So, um, how important are moots? Moots are very important. As I spent a little bit of time saying, all right. So, I got a problem that I will fix after we're done with this conversation. I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. Mandy, if you're seeing this on the side, if there's any way you can go in on the back end and fix that blacklisted questions. I'll finish the question about the moots though first. It's really important. I talked about it. I was choosing about doing and getting together in the real world. I think so often people get caught up in research and in planning and scheming and thinking and pondering that they spend a little bit of less time doing, and that's unfortunate. How true happens in the real world, and getting out and meeting people and interacting is the core of what we do. And so I encourage you guys all to do that. So moods are very important. What it sounds like people are telling me on the side as an editing tool to thank you very much, Mandy. Mandy says she fixed it. As an editing tool to prevent crazies from blowing up the AFA page with a bunch of comments that we don't want, we had gone in and made very restricted blacklisting on who could comment on things. We'd have to approve comments. With new Facebook algorithms, that has apparently just recently made the commenting on the side in these videos very difficult. So I apologize for that. Hopefully, you got it squared away. Makes me feel better. I thought you guys were just sitting there dead air, not wanting to ask anything, and that didn't make me happy. So I'm glad that there was some kind of a technical reason for it. Uh, Folk builder Jason Plurd asks, "Will I be at Thorfest again this year?" Barring some sort of emergency, yes. I look forward to that every year. I'm excited to go out there and see you guys. And this year, Anna says there might be cookies, so all the more reason. And I'm definitely looking to come out there. Hopefully, I can bring Mandy and Aubrey with me. Is the AFA still publishing the Runestone magazine? The AFA has not published a physical Runestone magazine since 2000. But as of last year, the AFA does the Runestone as our monthly email newsletter every single month. And that's filled with content about what we do, gatherings, get togethers, announcements. But yes, and if you're an AFA member, those get mailed to you every month unless you've selected other, or emailed to you rather every month unless you've selected otherwise. If you're not receiving them, check with your folk builder and we will try to get that squared away for you. How does shelter accommodations work at winter nights? Winter nights in the Poconos, they are cabins. I believe there's tent options available as well, but there's also cabins. Cabins are drafty and it's cold. It's cold this time of year, so make sure that you are prepared and that you bring warm things because it does get chilly in those cabins. Something you may want to have an electric heater for as well if if you're concerned about that, or maybe if you have small children or elderly folks. But yeah, there's cabins. It's kind of rustic. It's a really nice camp. It functions as a Girl Scout camp most of the year. So think Girl Scout camp when you're thinking about those accommodations. Stephen Jacob asks, is there any Q&A groups or somewhere we can get together with other AFA members to learn the tenets and history? Sort of. Yes, there's always room for more of that. It's Q&A time right here if you want, but specifically, if you're an AFA member, you should be added to a local AFA Facebook group to where these kind of discussions can happen. I think very often they're underutilized. I know that some regions have a Telegram group or maybe a group on a different application. I think your local folk builder can talk to you a little bit better about what that is. But yeah, if you're an AFA member, there's several groups out there that would love to have these conversations with you. Best place is if you can get together folks in person, but if that's not available to you right now, we do have those local groups for these conversations to happen. And if you can't find that, Stephen, go ahead and reach out to me again, send me a message or something, and I will try to get you directed to the right spot, okay? Rob asks, can I tell you about the calendar of holy days and how do we calculate when they occur? Yes. Calendar of holy days. Need to get the AFA calendar, and we have our holidays listed in that calendar. I will have to look and see if we have it posted somewhere else. If we don't, I can get that up or do something to help facilitate that. I've made sure on our physical calendars that we sell that we do have it, but it'd be nice to have that listed somewhere, Rob, if for some reason we don't. How do we calculate when they occur? So there's a couple of things. We factor in, astrological things like the solstices and the equinoxes. We factor in ancient history of things that our ancestors practiced in different areas at different times. We also focus on modern true history and things that have come to us. There's certain things that are based on very ancient traditions, and there's certain things that are brand new. It's important that we get together once a month to celebrate. So sometimes we find reasons to that aren't Viking reenactment. They're modern enacting of our faith, and we come up with a reason to get together at least once a month. So that's kind of why we have the number and the spacing of some of our holidays that we do. Our ancestors, certainly for equinoxes and solstices and things of the like, were very, very specific on when they practiced it. If you have a local kindred or your family, I would encourage you to be specific at those moments. The moment of equinox, the moment of solstice. When I was in Alaska, I was with the kindred Der Volksstamme auf dem Nordlika Bear. And we would get together. We were really good about it. We would get together. You'd have the solstice falling in the middle of a storm at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and we would make sure we were out there celebrating at that time. But the restraints of the modern world, sometimes when we celebrate as a group, we try to place that as the weekend as close to that as we can. I know for national events, when they come next to a very specific day's holiday, we try to do the national event the weekend previous to it so that kindreds can get together locally and celebrate on the day of if that's important to them. But that's kind of how we try to structure that. Bodie asks, can I talk about what happened to Meister von List that caused his revelation about the Armin Rune robe? Yes. He was blinded. And while blinded, he was gifted by the Allfather with runic knowledge and wisdom to share with the world. That sounds fanciful, but I do believe that that's true. But he was undergoing, I believe, cataract surgery. And for a period of time, he was temporarily blinded. Before that, he had been an avid enthusiast in trying to study about our history and the history of our folk, specifically his Austrian history and the history of our folk in Austria. And I remember going and he went into this ancient site that used to be a temple to our gods, and he was so inspired by it. He left an offering of some wine bottles, I believe, and he vowed that one day he would build a temple to Wotan. Um, and while physically I don't think that ever came to fruition, that's something that we plan to honor him specially at Odenshof now that we have a temple to Wotan. But yeah, during that surgery, he had a revelation that brought things together with these runes. Now, very many of these runes have cognates in the other systems that would be very familiar to you. But his reasoning, he connected them. He was given this connection between those runes and the runes that Odin speaks about in the Havamal, in the Runetal portion. And yeah, during that period, he had that revelation, and those runes were full of power, and they inspired so many people and a generation of folks. And that was practiced often underground to this very day. Um, we've met some older people that their parents and their grandparents specifically, were around during von List's time, and they continued practicing some of his runic ideas and his esoteric runic practices up to this day. So it's a little bit on Meister von List. Cody, are any shirts going to be sold at Winter Nights? I don't know. I need to figure that out. I don't think we have the availability to get new ones made. I do have some, and I hope we can see if they can get there, but that's kind of a question mark. We've gone through, excuse me, one of the changes we've gone through this last year is how we do some of our merchandise, and we're getting some good stuff. It's getting shipped out really quick, but getting inventory has been slow, and I'm working on that as best I can. But it's one of those things that we've got some other things that take priority on it. Is an updated True yearly holidays and bloat book still in the works? Yes, Brad, it is absolutely still in the works. It is taking much longer than I had hoped. We've got some good people working on it. It will happen. Can't give you a date that it's going to happen, but it will absolutely happen. And hopefully, we maybe can release some of that material early so that I can help some of our folk. But it absolutely will happen, and we're working on it. So Robert asked how to handle work restricting him wearing his Valknut because it's a racist symbol. It's not a racist symbol. Trying to think of your best path. I'm not sure if you've spoken to your HR department. I think a couple of keys on how to handle that, and I can't give you guys one solution that's going to fix everything, but um, in kind of broad strokes, it is very offensive when bosses or anyone for that matter tries to tell you that you can't wear a sacred symbol of our faith, and it's easy to get upset. It's even easier when you see other people freely being able to wear symbols of their faith or other groups treated differently, and it's really easy to get angry. That's the wrong way to handle it, and I'm not saying that's how you have or how you plan to, but just for anybody listening to this, when you talk to your HR department, you want to make sure that you use words they understand. You say, no, this is a symbol of my religion. You know, what's your religion? My religion is also true. When you describe it, the AFA is your church. The AFA is your spiritual group of whatever. It's all going to go in one ear and out the other. The AFA is your church. They know what that means. When else true is your religion, they know what that means. You don't ever want to talk about how not racist you are or how not this or how not that. You want to be proud of who you are and talk positively like there's no problem. If you go in there defensive and trying to defend yourself against something, and you look super guilty, you need to go in there proud because you are doing nothing wrong practicing your faith. Oh yeah, this is a symbol of my faith. This is my religion. It's also true. Oh yeah, well tell me about this also true. And tell them positive, happy things. Talk about it like it's something that you're proud of doing, not like some secret. And that's going to help the way they perceive it a lot. I mean, I think that depending on where you work and the requirements they have of other people, if other people are wearing religious symbols, I think there are some legal situations you can get into, but that's always a very difficult and a very expensive route. So I would say, first and foremost, be very polite, be very proud of your faith, talk about it in terms that they understand and that they respect. And that your Christian coworker next to you talk in the same terms he would use to explain using his crucifix. If your boss understands the one, he's much closer to understanding the other if you use the same kind of language. Matt, the AFA does not celebrate Leif Erikson's remembrance. There was a time in the past that we did, uh, but Leif was, and there's a reason for that. Leif was a first generation person to denounce Aussitru and convert to Christianity. While he was certainly a member of our folk that did great things, the points of our days of remembrance are for heroes of Aussitru, folks that practiced Aussitru, and folks that were part of our faith. Unfortunately, Leif was one of those first generation of people that rejected Aussitru, and so the Aussitru Folk Assembly doesn't any longer celebrate a day of remembrance. All right, this is a really interesting question. Thank you for asking this, Michael. What path would you recommend for a Christian pastor seeking to learn and practice Aussitru? Um, Couple of comments on that again, that sounds like a very unique situation. I'm assuming that it's someone who was a Christian pastor and not one that's currently a Christian pastor. Um, I would think that goes without saying, but in the day and age that we live in, I can't be sure that that's the case. Um, I would encourage anyone coming from Christianity, but specifically someone coming from Christian clergy, I would like to reassure them they don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is a tendency, and there certainly was in the first generation of modern Aussitru, to reject anything that Christians do and try to define ourselves by how not Christian we are. That's I understand that. I understand why that happened, but that doesn't need to happen. We need to define ourselves by who we are. One of the things with, and it depends on what denomination this pastor comes from and where his background is, but very often Christianity in the West is practiced certain ways because that's how white people practice religion, not because it has anything to do with Jesus. So I would encourage him not to think of it as has to change everything he does or everything he's comfortable with. He does need to look at it through a very different lens. He does need to reject the dogma and the Bible stories and the things that he's used to and replace that with our stories. Replace the faith that he once had with faith in our gods, who are very, very different. But the practice doesn't need to be completely different. He doesn't need to go out and grow long hair and grow, a long beard and start howling at the moon or anything. He really doesn't. So I would encourage him to figure out what made him reject his Christian faith that obviously he was so very active in. What was missing there? What holes didn't feel right? And then explore those within the context of Aussitru. Because I think that there's probably a lot of good there and a lot of valid things that he's built being a person of faith that he could apply to Aussitru once he had the proper lens, the proper understanding of our lore. So I think that's a really interesting place to come from. And I think it's a really powerful testament to Aussitru, to where we've developed as a faith, and to our gods that a Christian pastor reject that and embrace Aussitru. Robert Kelsey asks, when will the directions to Winter Nights be sent out to those of you all having registered? Cliff, hopefully Mandy is seeing this and she can tag Cliff Erickson in your post. I'm not sure if we're keeping those details secret this year or just what, but we can make sure those get out to you. If we tag Cliff in this post, we'll make sure those get to you. Billy Sapp, thank you for asking and being concerned about our members who've been around the fires. You asked if any AFA members have lost homes due to the fires. Yes, one member did lose his home, as far as I understand, in the state of Oregon. Right now, as Folk Builder's trying to talk to him about what he might need, we absolutely could do a fundraiser to help him out, and we have some resources in Folk Services to do that sort of thing. Hopefully Mandy can remind me after this call and we can look into that and see how that's progressing. But yes, and I'm glad that you're thinking about our family that way. Hopefully we can figure out something to do to help that gentleman. News on next Hoffs and gods and goddesses to be honored and why these choices. So Don, next Hoffs, we're in a really nice spot because we're in a situation where we can establish Hoffs much quicker than we could a long time ago. But we don't want to outpace ourselves. We want to make sure we take care of the needs of the Hoffs we have before we acquire new ones. So we're looking and we're contemplating. We have a loan that we've taken out that needs to be paid off before we start on the fourth Hoff. And the fourth Hoff is going to be dedicated to Njord. The reason that we're doing the gods that we're honoring with these Hoffs and in the order that we're honoring them is we're going off of the Hoffs as they're listed, or the gods rather, as they're listed in the Eddic poem, the Gylfaginning. And in that poem, the gods are laid out, and he lays out that there are 12 gods that are beneficial for mankind to worship. And he lays it out in kind of a cryptic way. But those are the 12 gods that we're going with, and we're going in that order. So if you want to look up that poem and go through there, that's how that's working. We're absolutely going to move on the next Hoffs. We haven't lost steam on it, but we do want to make sure there's a lot of work to be done, certainly at Baldur's Hoff. And there's some work that needs to be done at Thor's Hoff too, and we want to make sure we have that all squared away and taken care of before we move on to the next project. But those Hoffs should be in store certainly relatively soon. Rex, following on to his question, we're already looking. We always have our eyes open, but like I said, we do want to pay off the loan that we have for the Hoffs that we have currently before we start getting into another Hoff project, and we want to make sure that major work on those is all taken care of before we move on to that. Tyler, so okay. Hopefully Mandy can tag Cliff in this too. If not, I'll try to go. Tyler, you want to talk to Cliff Erickson, C. Erickson at runestone.org and confirm that you're still on the list to get runestones. I don't know if something may have changed with your email preferences, but no, they've come out every single month. So if you haven't been getting them, then that's something that we got to get figured out. But they have been out there, and okay. Maybe you're looking at the AFA library. If you're looking at the library on our website, there has been several months that we haven't gone back and uploaded them. We were looking for volunteers to help, and one of their jobs was going to be to upload runestones. So if that's what you're referring to, I will try to get to the bottom of that and help those get uploaded if that's where you're looking at them. But yeah, I believe that was probably back in May. Sarah asks, how's work progressing at Baldur's Hoff? Work is progressing great. We've got people putting in a lot of hard work with a lot of skill and a lot of know-how to make Baldershoff special and set and ready. Um, the date for the dedication in November is very tentative. We have some stuff in the community we need to get figured out first, and we have some regional shakeups there that we're working on, and we don't want to make promises on that date until we're 100% sure. That's when we're shooting for. That's what we're trying for. But there's a lot that needs to get done. Hmm. Andrew, you're right. The only calendar in the store is 2020. We do not have the 2021 out yet, but we are working behind the scenes on that, and I'm hoping that can be out relatively shortly. Uh, the 2020 calendar does have those dates we were talking about earlier, but I understand why in October of 2020 you probably don't want to purchase that calendar. We are getting a new one though, made for 2021, and hopefully that'll be up soon. Yeah, Tyler, I see your comment now, and yes, it's just we haven't had somebody upload them on there. We had some volunteer situations with that fall through, but I'd like to get those up there, and I want to get that figured out for you. And you're right, it has been since May since we've got them up on the website. But if you're not receiving them in your email, that's something that your folk builder and Cliff can help you get fixed. Um, Lane, any issues with celebrating Yule in January? Yeah, it's weird. Um, I don't. I believe really strongly in our faith that intention and will are fundamental to all that we do. And I don't think, I, from my perspective, I don't think that our gods are greatly offended at you if you celebrate Yule in January. I have, if you look at the history of our people and all of the things that all of the different branches of our people did for thousands of years, I'm sure you will find outliers. But celebrating Yule around the time of the solstice was always very important to our people, certainly fundamental to how we practice House of True today. Um, you can celebrate Yule whenever you want, and I don't think it hurts anything. But your best bet for celebrating Yule is during Yuletide at the end of December there with the rest of us. When you celebrate Yule at the same time the rest of us are, and it's different if you're in a different hemisphere, but if you celebrate Yule when everybody else is celebrating, you build that you build up that magical energy with everyone around the world celebrating and connecting with each other at a special time for a special purpose. And the further you are away from that, the more you miss out from that synchronicity of our folk. So Lane, yeah, I would urge you to celebrate Yule at the time the rest of us are celebrating Yule from excuse me, from the 21st on through the new year, or the 20th rather, for through the new year. James Alt says this, but yes, absolutely. Ask your folk builder about the Hoftoller. Now that he brings it up, something that has helped us, we got a couple questions about when's the AFA going to do our next Hof and excitement about that. The reason we've been able to do that is because you guys have stepped up your generosity in really important ways. Started last year with folks paying instead of their typical membership dues of $10 a month or $25 a month. They've started paying the Hoftoller, which is based on a percentage of their income, and that's a minimum of 1% of your income. And that has really enabled us to make a huge leap forward in what we're able to accomplish. You guys being generous makes all the difference because it takes money to do things. It takes money to buy Hofs. It takes money to advance. and you guys opening up your wallets and helping out by giving us that Hoftorah percentage. If we share that percentage of each other's success, it really moves us into the big leagues where we can accomplish some really amazing things. And that's the reason we've been able to establish Thorshoff and now Baldershoff. Lane, if you're looking to submit things for possible inclusion in a new bloat book, I would recommend sending them to Spawn. That's Spawn's helping out tremendously with that project, so I would try to get those to go to the Spawn Herald. Um, any thoughts on Stephen Pollington's work on the lore and on runes, other than his work being expensive? His work is very expensive, James, and I wish that it wasn't because I wish more people had access to it. I think Stephen Pollington is a huge expert in his field. I actually got to meet him and give him a ride one time. He came to AFA Midsummer, want to say 2010, maybe 2011 in California. And he was a great guy. He was a great guy to meet. I don't believe he's ousted true, but he's certainly open to it and talks with on friendly terms with a lot of people who do practice ousted true. I think his work is really good. His his English Warrior is really good, and his Mead Hall book is very good. Also, Elder Gods is very good. They're just very expensive. I I was younger back then, and I missed out on getting the ones he brought with him that were sold at a very reasonable price. I thought, I'll be able to pick that up when I get home. I'll order it on Amazon, and yeah, the price was kind of shocking. So I wish that there was a way that those were a little bit less because his work is very, very good. Zach Cato asks, "What do I think of the Norena Society?" All right, so this is why we do. This is why we do Q&A things. Um, I don't want to trash anybody, but I do want to be very honest. Mark Purrier, who started and runs the Norena Society, or certainly is a big part of running the Norena Society. I have a lot of respect for him personally. He is a great guy. He's a gentleman. He has always been extremely nice to me. He and I have a pretty good relationship, I think, and so I wouldn't want to say anything bad about Mark. There's a lot of members and people involved in the Norena Society that I have less respect for. Um, I in this talked earlier in this discussion tonight um, about Altitude being about practice. Um, I think the Norena Society does a really, really good job of researching obscure things and documenting those obscure things and writing materials. And those are all really important things. And it's very easy when I get so passionate about practicing Alcitru to not give due to research, because without research we would miss out on so much of the richness of what we do in our practice. But I think there's a fundamental difference between learning about Alcitru or coming up with theories and ideas about how you think Alcitru should be practiced and actually being a part of and practicing Alcitru. Um, and I don't feel the Norena Society puts their emphasis in the right place when it comes to that. Uh, as far as a group of people that research Alcitru, I think that they are really good as a part of as a well, I say as a group of people that research historical practice involved in ancient Ausotru, I think they do a very good job. As far as people who are involved with or contribute to the modern practice of Ausotru, I think that they don't do very well at that. But like I say, I have all the respect in the world for Mark Purrier, and I know he puts his heart and soul into what he does. I don't mean to disrespect that at all. But I think that I've seen a lot of people that have not found success practicing Ausotru in the real world gravitate towards the Narena Society so that they can endlessly pore over obscure bits of ancient archaeology rather than actually get out and worshiping our gods and being part of a group of people worshiping our gods. Fundamentally, that's what Ausotru is about. It's about gathering with a community of your folk to honor and build a relationship with the Aesir. That's always been important. It's been important to all of our ancestors since the Ice Age, since Hyperborea, since Ymir was deconstructed in order to build the universe that we're in. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And like I say, all respect to Mark Purrier. Um, It is hunting season. Hail Uller. That's one of the things I miss about being in Alaska is I used to love to go hunting. It was great when we'd hunt for moose, but it was even great just to go hunt for ptarmigan or grouse or rabbit and get out there. I miss that a lot. So good luck to all our hunters out there. I hope you guys bring home plenty for your family and for your folk. Especially, and I'm jealous for you guys out there hunting moose. Moose meat is delicious, and I hope you guys get plenty. Oh, okay, Michael. Well, that's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing your story. Uh, I didn't realize that it was you personally who was that Christian pastor who left and joined the AFA. That's that's really special, and it means a lot that you did that. Um, and I think that means a lot to our gods too, that you would go from that to embracing what we do. Um, yeah, if you have any specific questions about that, please reach out to me. Send me an email or just reach out to me here on Facebook. I'd love to talk to you about that. That's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Mario, I think that's a really interesting thing that you have and that you understand there. Mario says, as a former Roman Catholic, a lot of heathenry and Austertrue feels very similar to him, but much more fulfilling. The reason for that, in my belief, is that European Christianity developed based on our Austertrue roots. That's why the European Catholic Church is so very, very different from the Middle Eastern Christian churches. Is especially if you read the Germanization of early medieval Christianity, you understand that so much of that was built upon us, our folk customs, our hero worship, and our honoring of the gods and our ancestors. So much of that was co-opted into Roman Catholic tradition, and I'm glad that you see that. Oh, and Don, a note on that in regards to your asking why the scheme of honoring those 12 gods with these first Hoffs in the Gylfaginning poem. That's something that myself I actually talked about with Brad Taylor Hicks, that was kind of a mentor of mine and a very important person in the AFA at a very important time. And that was something that he and I had kind of worked on and talked about together when we didn't have Hoffs. and something that I thought was a really important thing and something that I wanted to carry on into a day and age when we did have our Hofs. So he was, in a way, he was the genesis for that idea. Mario, has 2020 seen a surge in membership outside the US? Just wondering. Yes, it has, but in a different way. Before 2020, we had a big surge of people, specifically in Scandinavia. Specifically, the groups that Anders, our folk builder over there, Anders Nilsson, was building, and he has a great group over there. They're still doing very, very well. But we have seen an increase recently in 2020 of people in different areas around the world. We've seen some folks in different parts of South America who've joined. We've seen some activity that we hadn't seen in a while in some isolated parts of Europe. Certainly, we've seen a boost in our membership in Italy, and we have a new folk builder in the United Kingdom, but in Northern Ireland. So she's on the island of Ireland over there. So kind of in two worlds that way. We have we've had some international growth that's just been in different areas than we've traditionally seen up to this point, and that's really an exciting thing. Um, what else we got? Looks like Gothi Spawn is waxing poetic about the synchronicities of 12 as a recurring theme in what we're doing. It's certainly part of the solar resurgence of Austertrue and a focus on a lot of the solar principle. And I think it's kind of beautifully put by Gothi Spawn there. Where is the store? The store is at Runestone Gifts. There's a link at our website. If you go to www.runestone.org, there's a link on there for the AFA store, and there you can find the things that we do have in stock. And Mandy is also correct when she says it's in our garage, because that's where the stock is being held until I take it to the post office. Andrew Johnston, if you want to volunteer to help with the website, reach out to Clifford Erickson, C. Erickson at runestone.org. Cliff definitely needs some help. He's going to need to kind of see where your skills lie and what we can do and how that works. But he's the man you want to talk to. And yeah, I thank you very much for offering that. And hopefully we can find some stuff to put you to work on and do that. Thank you for offering. Robert, I'm not sure if you saw me or if you heard me earlier, but go to www.runestone.org and click on the store link, and it'll take you right to our store. Ah, there we go. All right, it looks like some folks have posted a link for that for you. You guys are getting to it before I answer. Appreciate that. We got some great people looking out. I appreciate having the backup on that. Thorfest in January is a regional event going to be held in Colorado. It's always a good time. It's a nice time of the year to go do stuff in Colorado. It's nice and cold and wintry. I miss that. Um, so yeah, if you guys can make it out, Thorfest in January, I will be there. And our folk builder, Jason Plurb, puts in a lot of work to make a really nice event. I've been there for the first two. I plan on being here for the third one this year. It's a good time, and I hope you guys do register. Yes, Will, absolutely. Our leadership in the AFA Upper South is doing amazing. We've got some of our very best and very brightest building that region and making it shine. That is the region that hosts Thorshoff, and we're very fortunate to have you guys there working so hard, making that such a successful area for us. You're welcome, Zach. Like I say, I don't want to talk bad about anybody. That's not my meaning, but I do want to answer questions frankly when I can. Uh, Robert, I appreciate you buying that book. Robert just bought the Astru Book of Blotar and Rituals by the Astru Folk Assembly. The book's very outdated. We're working on putting a new one. A lot of that book doesn't reflect the. Arguably, it didn't reflect the AFA very well at the time. It certainly doesn't reflect the AFA very well now. I would look for any rituals in there by Alan Turnage. Alan is still a very strong member of the AFA. He is on the Whitten. He is, he's absolutely one of our best guys, and his stuff is very solid. I think when you're looking in there, if you look for anything that's just, it's been forever since I've read the table of contents for that book because we've been trying so hard to replace it. But anything in there that talks about the DCER or the DCER bloat, that's what I would look into. That will be really helpful. The other thing, Robert, if you want to, I would suggest that you reach out to Katie Erickson. Katie will be able to help you really well, and I think that she can give you some really good guidance on winter nights in general and on the DCER and on a DCER bloat. Um, Katie Erickson, and it fails me. You guys may notice that on our runestone situation, we have our first initial and our last name as our runestone address. Well, since Cliff and Katie both got married, C. Erickson is already taken. So hopefully Mandy can hear me and Mandy can link you to Katie's email address, and I will make sure I get better on knowing exactly what her email address is. But yeah, Robert, that's who I'd suggest you reach out to. And like I said, hopefully somebody who's hearing me talk that's an AFA leader can go ahead and link you to Katie. Mm. Okay. So Jason asks, how do I feel about Proto-Indo-Europeans and their attitude towards women? I think it's very hard to authentically say what the attitudes of the Proto-Indo-European peoples were towards women in ancient Indo-European Aryavarta times. I think that a couple of things of note about that was recognizing the sacrality of women in their proper roles as women. I think that was very relevant to the Proto-Indo-Europeans and has come down to us in a lot of traditions. I think that in modern paganism, there has been far too heavy of an emphasis on the horse goddess and far too little emphasis on the cow goddess. One thing about the Proto-Indo-Europeans and the relationship to women that I think is really important, and I think for our people to make note today, that you could transition a horse goddess towards becoming a cow goddess, but you couldn't go the other way and go backwards. And so I think there's something to be spoken about our women transitioning to those different phases of life and to celebrating goddesses of motherhood, of family, of order, and of frith weaving. And I think all too often the focus has been too much on the wild abandon and the sexuality while taking away from and not emphasizing uh, the motherhood and the order and the structure and support of Proto-Indo-European society that women were so much a part of. Mm. Zach, I'm not sure what you're asking. Zach asks where one may find most of the heroes for our days of remembrance outside of List, Rudd, and Christensen. Where you can find a list of what those days are, Zach, or where you can find information of those people. I'm not exactly sure the question you're answering, or you're asking, and I apologize for that. Michael, your journey sounds very interesting. I appreciate you sharing with us. That's fascinating. Mm. Brian, I'm doing it again, and I apologize. I keep I keep thinking that you guys see it in a scroll on the side of the screen, or if you're watching it on Facebook, in a little, obviously you're watching it on Facebook, or if you're watching it on your phone, in a little chat section underneath it. I forget that you guys, if you're watching it on your computer, can't see the questions. I'm trying to get better about reading the question out loud. Obviously, I still have a ways to go on that, but I'm sorry about that. Oh, and Mandy kind of answered the question too, if that was a different route you were taking. I have to look down and look at my phone because I get different questions on my phone than I do here live for whatever reason. Yeah, Brian, it seems like Facebook's always trying to, and whatever our issues with Facebook, I think that they try really hard to keep their system up to date and flash you with the newest and the best things, but sometimes the updates they do don't really make the user experience better. And sometimes it just confuses some of us that are used to doing it one way and we've got to figure out the new system. I know that's a struggle for me often. Um, Mario, we will definitely work on that. Mario says there's an Yule bloat in the Book of Blotar. In our new book that describes our bloats and our ritual and why we do what we do, we will make sure to have one in there. Make note if you're in the Midwest, we've got our apprentice folk builder who is in Wisconsin but travels around the region talking about October moots they have set up for Ohio, for Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And they're going to be listed soon. Those folks would love to help you get involved. We have a lot of members in that area, and we're building something really special there. So if you are in that region, please reach out. Those guys would love to help. Brian, yes, there are plans on printing more Thorshoff shirts. There's plans on printing up more shirts for just about everything. Unfortunately, we're running right now at kind of one shirt set at a time. I'm about to put some women's AFA shirts on the website as soon as I get those unpacked and sorted. That'll be our next thing. So I'm not sure when we're going to shuffle around to more Thorshoff shirts, but we absolutely want to have more of those. It's just a matter of when we can get to them, and I'm trying to roll through that as best I can. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to catch up on the questions and things over on the side. Running a little bit overtime tonight, but I spent 20 minutes flailing and fumbling thinking you guys weren't asking questions. So I figured I'd go a little bit longer and try to make sure I could answer more and talk to you guys a little bit more and a little bit better. Henry asks, is the structure and bylaws of the AFA readily available? Um, no, not really. If you had questions, I would email whitten@runestone.org and we could get those answered for you. It just takes some running around and finding them for you, but we could get that squared away. Um, Mario, I think that you're responding to where we came up with the origin of the days of remembrance outside of those ones that Zach mentioned. Most of those have historically been something that I believe was instituted in the Austrian Free Assembly way back in the 1980s. I think was the first time they started celebrating those days of remembrance. Very often, those are um, Norwegian martyrs for our faith that were listed in poems in the hymn Skringla. But we wanted to expand that a little bit to take into account some other heroes of Austertrue. Certainly modern heroes of Austertrue, like von List, like Arud Mills, like Elsie, but also I wanted to celebrate Athenaric of the Goths because he was a very proud proponent of our faith and was at a time where his tribesmen were weighing keeping their old faith with embracing the Christianity that they found in Rome. And so I think that's an important story to be told. We also have some other outliers, such as Herman and um, such as Radbod of the Frisians. So they've been extrapolated over our our time of Austertrue becoming and looking back to history at folks that stood for our faith against opposition, and now they've evolved to include modern modern heroes that have been so important to the resurgence of Austertrue in our time and in the time of our parents and grandparents. James, we always make two X's. Um, we don't currently, and it's just not a reasonable thing for us to do to have three X's in stock. But having two X's is something we always do. That may be one of the sizes that goes quick. It seems like every time we try to stock shirts and we sure to sell out of one size, we stock heavy for it, and the next go around, it's a whole different size that seems to be the big seller. So that's always a tricky thing to figure out what works right. So Brian asks, what I would recommend for somebody interested in becoming a Gothi in the future, study wise. Um, as folks may or may not know, and I know this isn't the question, but I think it's an important preamble. Folks that want to become a Gothi in the Austrian Folk Assembly need to first go through their time being a folk builder for a number of reasons. It gets you very well versed in the very real membership struggles and hard work that goes into being a Gothi behind the scenes. Um, and it gets you very familiar with the AFA and how we do things, and I think that's really important. As far as study materials for Gothar, we have a list of Gothi prerequisites that Gothi Spawn could get you and get you squared away with if you ask them. I think that's the best, do that because that's the reason that list exists. And as I said, Gothi Spawn can get those for you if you reach out to him at s Herul, Sherul at runestone.org, or if somebody could tag him in your message there. Um, yeah, off the top of my head, what I think would be a very valuable thing for you to read and study is the culture of the Teutons. I always recommend it, but it's very, very important. So that's something that I would recommend you make a study of. All right. We have Jason asking, spiritually speaking, why is loyalty so sacred? Trying to think of the best approach. Trust is fundamental to accomplishing anything. If you can't trust people standing next to you, then you can't focus on your goal ahead. You always have to be looking over your shoulder. Loyalty is very important because our ability to commit to each other, our ability to commit to our gods, and our ability to commit to a goal or to a cause is the only way that we move forward and we find success. When we are atomized, when we're only out for ourselves, we're scattered, we're easily defeated, and we make no progress as a people. Sometimes we make individual progress, but you've got everybody all around you looking to take that progress from you when there's not loyalty. Having loyalty in those bonds that it makes, uh, there's the practical, you need people on your team to accomplish things, and you need to be able to trust the man next to you. But as we see when we gather for ritual, and as we see when we share a horn for stumble, having a group of trusted people who are united by loyalty is worth more than the sum of those parts. The bond and the brotherhood built by loyalty, loyalty within the AFA, loyalty to our gods, loyalty to our cause of Asatru, it amplifies all of those individual pieces and makes us each worth more than we would be as a collection of individuals. Loyalty is kind of an X factor that allows us to do great things. We've seen in the past when our folk are united, strong with bonds of loyalty, they are almost unbreakable. But when they're loosely kind of confederated in a very loose bond and there's not that loyalty, we're easily defeated by any force that wants to defeat us. Loyalty is the key to victory. Brian, I would reach out to folk builder Trent East, T East at runestone.org. As far as I know, he was one of the people who was heavily involved in the AFA Duolingo group. I'm not sure if that's still very active or not, but I know I still use Duolingo. I think it's a really good resource, and I hope folks are using it. Don Ricardo, you've always disliked proselytizing, and you want to know my ideas on how best to share our faith by example, and how do we see the Astro faith progressing over the years. Um, I think that proselytizing is a loaded term that means different things to different people. I think going out and talking to people about your faith is important and is a really powerful tool. I think we don't want to go door to door and bother people. I think that's obnoxious and I don't think that's well received and I don't think that's going to be successful. But I do think that sharing our faith and in a convicted way that we believe this is important, we have conviction in it, is really important. And we should want to share that with people. By example, certainly. People always ask, and I think the most important thing that we have to show our faith and to spread and give fame to Asatru is by being great examples of it. If you look good, if you behave good, if you are successful, if you have a nice family and you have success in your life, people will see that and they'll wonder what you have and how you were able to do this. And if you're able to explain that you're able to be the person you are because of your faith in Asatru, that's a powerful testimony that nobody can look bad at. So example is certainly the best way I would recommend to share our faith. Um, the more we have Hoffs, the more we grow our membership that way. But specifically, when we have real world things, we're going to garner a lot more attention from people over the years. That's going to be a very real thing. Hopefully, that brings a lot of people to what we're doing. Um, One thing I've noticed that we've, in a way that we've been progressing, and I hope that we continue progressing this way, is that Asatru has grown up in a lot of ways. We've changed from defining ourselves by what we're not. Now we define ourselves by what we are, by what Asatru is. We've stopped focus on Viking reenactment and focused on living Asatru today and dressing like modern people and existing in the world that we live in and making it better. We've also moved from being, very closed off and very secretive to practicing Asatru in the light, practicing Asatru in the daylight, being proud of who we are, and I think that's helped a lot. I think we've initially got a lot of people that had a lot of struggles got a lot of fringe people initially. I think we've seen over the last, 5 years, certainly 10 years beyond that, have seen a growth in Alistair True of, you know, more run of the mill people, more people in the middle, more people who are successful people in life. We had a lot of people early on come to Alistair True because they didn't find success in other places. Now we're seeing people that have normally been successful that choose Alistair True not from a place of weakness, but from a place of strength. And that's been a really big advancement. So I see us progressing more that way. I see us getting more young families, more people that are successful, more people that are less from the fringes, and more normal folks wanting to return to the religion of their ancestors. That's where I see us progressing. So Joe asks about those 12 Aesir, and he mentions some different questions in the Edda. If you read the Gylfaginning poem that I mentioned, he lists 12, but he lists them in a very strange way. He actually lists 14, but two of those he makes mention it's not good to worship, or we wouldn't want their name spoken. So deciding on that is one of the tricky things, and Hodor is one of those. So, and yes, certainly Frey was accepted and is one of the Aesir. He was brought into the tribe of the Aesir, and he's mentioned in the poem that I mentioned as one of the 12. If I remember correctly, he's who the fifth Hoth will be dedicated to. Apparently, I passed Zach's test. I'm glad. Yes, the stories in the Heimskringla were where most of the original Days of Remembrance heroes are from. Also, as a matter of fact, the Heimskringla was the first, I think it was the first bit of our lore that I read way back 20 years ago now. And I found it really fascinating. It was something I was reading when I was recovering from a splenectomy that I went through. Random, random factoid, but something that always comes to mind. Mario, I would suggest if you have legal questions that you consult our law speaker, Alan Turnage, A. Turnage at runestone.org. Alan is a lawyer. Um, he practices in Florida, so I don't know how much he can help you with Canadian issues, but he at least speaks that language. And if you had some specific questions, I'm sure he'd be very happy to try to do what he could to help you. Is there an effort to unify folkish organizations from the AFA? There is always an effort by the AFA to bring all of the folkish Aussertruer under the Trihorns and to have them all join the Aussertru Folk Assembly. That's what I strongly believe in. I think that is the most effective thing to unify folkish Aussertru organizations. When you say that, I'm not really sure who these other folkish Aussertru organizations are. So I think there's a couple of questions that need to be asked there. But yes, in that sense, we certainly would love to organize or to unify Folkish Aussertru all as part of the Aussertru Folk Assembly. Okay. So a little bit more on your question there. As far as other groups, you mentioned I've got to say, I'm not familiar with the PNWWP. As far as the Austro Alliance is concerned, what they do and what we do is very different. I don't feel that in large part we're on the same page, and I'm sure that we are on the same page with members of the Alliance. There's a lot of members on the Alliance that are very far in other directions that aren't in alignment with us. I don't believe that that group is inherently folkish in this day and age. I think that it very much was when it was founded, and I think it's gone a real different direction. Um, but folkish members of the Austro Alliance that would like to be part of what we're doing, I would love to see them join the Austro Folk Assembly. As far as what you're saying, George, with the Odinic Rite, there's a lot of things about the Odinic Rite and their literature that I really like. There's members that I've met that I really liked. It's very hard to find Odinic Rite members that aren't incarcerated. I've only met or interacted with a few here in the United States that are not incarcerated. The Metzgers up in Oregon, I don't know him very well, but I know I met Himla, and she seems like a very nice lady. I'm sure she's got some good things going on, but I don't. The Odinic Rite is kind of keeping very much to themselves, as far as I can tell. They are very much out of the limelight. I think they have a very strong prison outreach here in the United States, but outside of prison, I really haven't seen that they have a lot going on. Henry, that's a good question. You say under, you said, what about equals? I'm unaware of any other folkish organization that could claim equality with the Austro Folk Assembly. And I don't say that rudely, but what I always find when people ask those questions or want unity of folkish organizations is they take groups of 10 people and want those to be treated equally with groups of hundreds of people. And in Alcitru, and in any of the groups you've mentioned, we talk about how we don't believe in equality and how equality is a false god. We we believe in merit, we believe in accomplishment, and we do believe in hierarchy. I'm not opposed to working with another folkish group that had somewhat similar to what the Austro Folk Assembly has in scope or in membership or things of that nature. But I don't think that really exists, or I certainly haven't seen that here in the United States. I think there may be some organizations like that in Europe that we don't know about. And again, if situations comes up with groups that are equal to the Austro Folk Assembly, I'd be happy to work with them under that agreement. But I don't see any groups here domestically that are frankly at the same level the Austro Folk Assembly is currently. And I don't mean that insultingly at all. All right, guys. Do we have any more questions? Um, Henry, no, the AFA is not interested in building other organizations. We have our plate full building the Austro Folk Assembly and are very successful. In the past, where I've seen, desires for the AFA to help other groups, it's always other groups of very few people standing on the shoulders of what the Austro Folk Assembly has built. And it's not building what we're doing. We're much stronger if we work together going forward. And the Austro Folk Assembly is that way forward. And I'd encourage those other groups to join. If they don't, they're welcome to do what they're doing on their own. I think they would find much more success, and I think we would all do much better if they would join the Austro Folk Assembly. Um, Looking to see if I missed anything here real quick. I appreciate you guys very much for bearing with me tonight. I know there was a portion of this conversation that I couldn't see, so I thought you guys weren't asking stuff, and you were. But I appreciate you guys hanging in there. Checking any last stuff here. Mario asks for a laugh. My thoughts on the usage of our gods in political movements, for example, the soldiers of Odin. I think our gods are important to inspire our people to do things. And I think that our people being active politically and inspired by our gods is in keeping with that. Um, I think one needs to be really, really careful though when they try to overtly put our gods on the face of their politics. Because while I think that there's room certainly for religiosity in someone's political actions, that's always been the case with our folks since the dawn of time. I think that it becomes very arrogant when we use the gods for our ends rather than using ourselves for the gods' ends. When we put words or ideas into our gods' mouths, especially those that are extremely foreign. You say for a laugh, and you mentioned some right wing groups, but I've seen a lot of left wing groups with the unis putting our gods on all kind of very strange and very deviant political messages that have zero commonality with anything that our Lord tells us about our gods or that our tradition tells us about our people and our values. So I would be very, very careful with the use of our gods for political things, and I would keep that as limited and as complete good faith with our tradition as possible. George, my thoughts exactly. There is some. Ashley asked if there's any official AFA literature available for purchase on our website. In our store, there are a couple of things. We are working on getting some more literature out there. That's been something we focused a lot on building, on establishing HOFs, on building community, and on doing as far as that. But on producing literature, that's always been something that we've wished we were better at, and that we just haven't had the right people in the right places with the right skill set to do that as well as we should. We're working on it behind the scenes. We have some good projects in the work. We'll definitely get some more AFA literature out there. Zach Cato asked the symbolism of the AFA flag and the AFA tri-horns. Um, the spinning horns are the horns of Odin and Odin's inspiration. Uh, they're Bodin, Son, and Odrorir are the names of these horns. These horns carry the meat of inspiration, inspiration to the All-Father, inspiration from the All-Father to us, and spinning in that spinning motion that's so common to the motifs of all Aryan peoples in our tradition. This symbol was specifically found on the Snodelev stone in Denmark, and it's accompanied by other symbols of that solar energy, of that spinning, of that inspiration. This being the most recent in the series of 3 that were on that stone. But that's what that's from. The blue represents the cloak of the All Father and the mystery of the night sky. The white and the horns represent purity, purity of our purpose, purity of our spirits. And that gold is also purity, that symbol of value, of timeless value. It's not like shiny gold. It's if you go try to get that gold made somewhere, it's very often referred to as ancient gold or old gold. My thoughts on the Irminsul and its place in modern Hofs. Um, the Irminsul symbol is kind of controversial. I don't really have a dog in that fight too much. The symbol itself has never been something that I have, I don't know, felt that drawn to. Certainly not opposed to it. I think the concept of that world pillar is extremely important. I take nothing away from the meaning of the Irminsul. But as a symbol, it's very easily confused. It's very easily confused with the cross. It's very easily confused with the T. And the symbol that we have, there's a lot of different theories on how that came about, and some of it is, I don't know. Like I said, it's not something huge that I think of very often, but that's fine. I would love to have something of that symbol at Modern Hoffs, if that's relevant. I think that it carries on in things like the maypole or things like trees often that we venerate. If there's some great tree on Hoff property, I think that would be a great way to incorporate some of that symbolism. Brian, I'm going to real quick click on that link and try to give you an answer. All right, not a fun answer. Brian asked if I'm familiar with a book called Odin's Chosen. No, unfortunately, Brian, I am not familiar with that book, but I'm kind of curious now, so I may take a look. Hmm. Perfect, Joe. Joe looks like he's gone through and done the look at the list that I mentioned earlier of the gods to be honored by our first 12 AFA Hoffs. So you guys can take a look at that if you're curious over on the side, if you can see it. If not, he's got the order like this. Don't hold me to it because I would need to check it, but it looks right. Odin, Thor, Balder, Njord, Frey, Tyr, Bragi, Heimdall, Vidar, Vali, Uller, and Forseti. Mm. Rob, that's what I was getting at, but I was trying not. Rob mentions that there's a theory that the common representation of the Irminsul is based on the palm tree. I'm not saying I agree or I don't agree, but I see what they're saying. But you said it, not me, Rob. But that is one of my concerns when we talk about using it a lot. So, all right, guys, this is almost twice as long as I usually do these, but I've had a really good time talking to you guys tonight. Thank you so much for everybody who was on here. Thank you for you guys who had patience while we were figuring out the system. And thank you so much for everybody who asked questions. I really appreciated it. If you can make it out to Winter Nights in the Poconos, please do reach out to Cliff Erickson, see Erickson at runestone.org. He get you registered. Um, Other than that, I hope you guys have an amazing Winter Nights, an amazing rest of this October, and I will talk to you guys again in November. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA.